The International Association for Near-Death Studies presents NDE Radio, a weekly exploration of near-death experiences and similar encounters with the other side. Now, here's your host, Lee Whitting.
What if your wife or husband had premonitions of the future? What if they could move objects without touching them, or even without touching it, hit you with a flying vegetable as you walk down the supermarket aisle? Welcome to NDE Radio, brought to you by the International Association for Near-Death Studies. I'm your host, Lee Whitting. Psychokinesis, or PK, from the Greek mind movement, is seen by some as the next potential step in human evolution. Examples include moving an object, levitating, and teleporting. In the Matrix movie, Neo watches as a child bends the spoon with his mind. Neo is impressed until the child reminds him of the underlying reality: there is no spoon. Our program today picks up where we left off with Cheryl Lee last week, as she describes in detail her 3 near-death experiences, the gifts she gained, and how she is researching most especially her psychokinetic abilities. My interview with Cheryl Lee was recorded at the Washington, D.C. IONS conference in August of last year. If you were listening to this as an archive program, I would suggest you first listen to last week's show, which is the first half of this remarkable interview. Enjoy. Well, tell us about your third NDE.
Well, my third NDE, I was a master corporal in an artillery regiment at the time of my third NDE, and I was in a really good position. I was so happy at that particular time in my life. I worked as a musician for the artillery part of the year as a reservist, and the rest of the year I was a landscape painter, and I made enough to make a decent living between those two. And the day of the accident, I had actually driven to a provincial park. It was in January of 93, and it was an unusually warm January day in the Canadian prairies because it went above freezing. And so, I couldn't just let a day that's above freezing go to waste. So, I took my little dog and we went out to the provincial park, and I was going to paint for the day. And if I were ever going to choose my last day on this earth, that would have been absolutely perfect. And it was the most perfect, beautiful day I'd ever had. I was out there with my little dog. I painted. We ate candy bars by a frozen lake. We had hot chocolate, and it was just a wonderful, spectacularly beautiful day out in the wilderness. And on our way home, I guess because the temperature had, as soon as the sun dipped below the horizon, the snow that had melted and water had gone across the road and it froze up as black ice. And on my way home at highway speeds, myself and a tractor trailer coming in the opposite direction both lost control, and my car was sheared in half and crushed to the dashboard by the back of the tractor trailer landing on it. My little dog was probably killed instantly. And I don't know how I survived it. I was told by the volunteer fire department that got there first that it was like there was this tiny little box in the wreckage that I was squished into. And there was nothing else that wow. There's, one of the things that saved me was the driver's seat broke, so I was flat on my back when the ceiling was crushed down to the dashboard. Otherwise, I certainly wouldn't be here. I also wouldn't be here if there hadn't been a witness to the accident that was on the volunteer fire department and who had access to the heavy equipment they used to pull the tractor trailer off of my car and do CPR on me. And it was just, very unusual because it was an isolated road going into a provincial park in the wintertime when there's nobody. Only crazy people go into the wilderness in January.
So what happened to you?
What happened to me? I didn't go through a tunnel, but strangely enough, the first things I remember were being in an apartment that was really long and skinny, and there were bookshelves all the way down. And my grandmother was there, the one who had passed away when I was in my 20s. She was there, and we went out in the balcony, and my little dog Cassie was playing in the meadow below. And I wanted to go there with her. I was going to jump off the balcony to go be with my dog. And my grandmother wouldn't let me go. And I guess to you I would describe it as she was hanging onto my hand, but I'm not really sure it was like it's not like this kind of a hand. Yeah. It was kind of like being light and sort of having this idea of this image of myself too, but knowing that this isn't really me, that the light bits are me. Even my dog, my dog was like light with an idea of herself as a dog, kind of. And I really, really wanted to go down where she was. She's playing in the meadow, and there was like a forest beyond, and she was going into the forest, and I was going to follow her, and my grandmother would not let me go, and I fought it, and I was going to go into that forest, and Grandma wouldn't let me, and she kept saying, I know that you don't understand this right now, and I didn't, because I didn't really remember what had happened and where what had led up to that. I just remembered being on this balcony with my grandma, and I was so happy to see Grandma, because I hadn't seen her and touched her like that in years. And she just kept saying, I'll get you through this. And I kept thinking, get me through what? This place is great. What are you talking about? Get me through this. And come on, Grandma, let's go down there and follow Cassie. And she kept saying, like, really, just remember this part that, I'll get you through this. Like, it's okay, I'll get you through this. And, but she wouldn't let me go. And she kept telling me I needed to go back. And I said, well, go back to what? I don't want to go anywhere. I want to stay here. And she said, well, you're going to have to go back, but you don't have to go back right this minute, even though I was thinking, well, minutes don't really make sense. But she said, we can hang out here for a while. And we kind of went into that apartment and watched it get kind of dark. The sun went down outside. Well, and I guess I should kind of say that when we were out on the balcony and everything felt really great, it was raining, but it wasn't raining like rain. It was just, there was these little drops that looked like raindrops of light, and they were touching my skin. And wherever they touched, they felt like warm, and they were like happy raindrops. And everything, there was a sense that everything had this consciousness, that everything was intelligent and had emotions. And so you knew how the flowers were feeling, and you knew how the light was feeling, and how it was responding. And it was just really happy, like, yay, I exist. Like there was just this yay existence kind of attitude about everything. And there was also, it was like winter and summer and spring and fall all at the same time. And so, you'd see like bunnies that were white and bunnies that were brown, and flowers and snow.
From the balcony?
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I could see all that. That there was all these, that everything was at once, even though I had a sense that there were different times being represented. There was all, like, it was kind of like, how now can be like now this instant, but if you really think about it, it's always now.
So it's everything compressed into one vision.
Yeah.
So what happened when they rescued? Was that the end of your vision, or did you go somewhere else after that?
Well, I remember my grandma and I sitting around and talking for a long time inside. We had tea and cookies. And one of the really funny things is that I remember the cookies because there were peanut butter cookies, there were chocolate chip cookies, there were hermit cookies, and this other type of fruit cookie that I didn't like. And I remember eating all the peanut butter and all the chocolate chip cookies and leaving the other ones. And my grandma didn't eat them. And I kept thinking, like, Grandma, why don't you eat them? Because you know I'm not going to eat them. And she kept saying, well, we'll just wait till you'll want them later. And I'm like, no, I won't. I don't eat those kind of cookies. But it's funny because in the years since then, those are my favorite types now. So I have this image now that the next time I go back, the cookies I like best will be waiting there for me. And we talked about my life, but like not just what had already happened in my life, but also things that were going to happen. Mm-hmm. But one of the things I found out, and I was able to confirm it, is I didn't know this about my mom and my grandma, but they didn't like each other before my parents were married. It was my dad's mother, and they're so much alike. And I guess as a little kid, it was hard, like mom and grandma were just cut from the same. Like my dad really chose someone very, very much like his mother to marry, and I had no idea that Grandma had actually been quite mean to my mom and done mean, spiteful things, and she actually said that she felt very badly for how she had treated my mother, because she said my mother actually turned out to be a very good mother to her grandchildren, and that she wishes that she had been kinder to her when she was alive. And I went and I asked my mom about some of the things that my grandma had told me about, and my mom confirmed it. But when you're little, you're oblivious to what the adults, and how people are getting along. You just assume everybody loves grandma.
So after tea and cookies, how did you, was there something between that and your being back in your body? There was a lot of information in that thing. Like I said, I saw things that were going to happen, and things that have actually happened to me since then that I remember seeing. But good and bad?
Yeah, both. Yeah, yeah. Like I saw, I saw more about the end of my first marriage, and which wasn't very good, and things about my future that some haven't happened yet, but some have. And at the time, I really wasn't sure what to think about it all. I remember her telling me, though, that when I got back, there would be a sign from her that this really happened. And one of the things that was interesting was when I had gone painting in the park, I had a set of paintbrushes that she had given me. Now, almost everything was destroyed in my car. My car was ripped in half, and there was very little left. I mean, I had a steel metal thermos of hot chocolate that was just crumpled up like a wrapper. The car was unrecognizable. It was in pieces, and somebody had found my backpack in the wreckage, and it was even shredded. But inside the backpack, these watercolor brushes that my grandmother had given me were absolutely pristine. They were the one thing that survived the car accident. Yeah, so that was kind of interesting. But I did not want to come back. And particularly once I figured out what I was coming back to, because at first I was kind of oblivious to what would be waiting back for me. And I remember seeing what was my body in the hospital, and it was in really bad shape. I mean, it was all purple and swollen. It didn't look like me at all. And I remember thinking, there's no way I'm going to fit in there. That was my biggest concern, is I'm not going to fit.
Your soul was not going to fit in your body. Were there serious injuries? I mean, were you at broken bones or damaged organs or anything like that?
I was unconscious for days after the accident. So I had a severe head injury. They originally weren't sure if I was actually going to keep this arm. I had really, really bad. I mean, when my car was ripped in half, it was ripped in half right between the driver's side and the passenger side. So I had a lot of injuries along my right-hand side. My knee was, like, my leg had to be stuck back together by an orthopedic surgeon. I needed extensive plastic surgery, and like most of the skin was ripped off this side of my face.
Did a beautiful job.
You know, I have a fractured bit here. My jaw was knocked out of place. You know, I had a big gash here. I mean, originally they were not expecting me to live. Then they weren't expecting me to have any hearing in this ear, and they were pretty sure I would lose the sight in this eye. They thought the brain damage would probably be pretty extensive. I mean, my first husband was told, like, he was in the army at the time, and he was expecting to come and identify the body. They weren't expecting me to still be there when he got there. Yeah, it was really hard on him. And then when I first woke up, I guess to get back in the body, my grandmother pushed me. Just you know, I did not go willingly. I distinctly remember being pushed, and I distinctly remember thinking, Grandma, like not. How could my grandma do that?
Grandma, how cruel you are.
I had a difficult time thinking that my grandma would do something like that. It just wasn't my image of her at all. Yeah, so when I was there, I think one of the first things I remember was the firemen who had gotten me out of the wreckage. They had come to the hospital with a teddy bear for me. And when I first woke up, like, you know, the idea that place is more real than this place, you really notice it when you first come back. Because when I woke up, I thought it was just all a dream. I remember these 3 hazy-looking firemen, and the first thing I thought was, I must be dreaming. But if I'm dreaming about firemen, why am I not dreaming about my brother who's a fireman? Because it seemed to me if I was going to dream about firemen, that would be like the one fireman that I know. Why isn't he there? And not only that, but why are they holding this teddy bear and shaking it in front of me? I'm a grown woman, but my eyes had been swollen shut, and originally the doctors were concerned that because of all the glass from the windshield, that I might not have eyesight, particularly in this eye. And so, but they couldn't see anything because my face was just purple and everything was swollen shut. There was no way for me to open my eyes. And so when the swelling had gone down, and the first thing that I remember when I could open my eyes was a bunch of firemen with a teddy bear talking to me like I was a baby, because they wanted me to open my eyes because they were just so thrilled to see that I actually had survived, and that the person they'd rescued was actually alive, and you know, recognizing them in some way.
How long did it take you to recover?
Surprisingly, not anywhere near as long as the doctors thought it would. I made a tremendously quick recovery. Now, I had to have a lot of surgery on the leg, but I was actually on parade, doing a change of command parade. It was in January of the accident. I was doing a change of command parade, playing drums in a pipe band by June. Yeah. Now, I couldn't walk upstairs. It took me, there were things I couldn't do, and actually I did that parade, and afterwards I was walking on crutches again. I kind of went back and forth. I couldn't walk for very far, but I was, that August I flew to Vancouver and played in the Seafest parade. Yeah.
So what gifts did you find you had after this third NDE?
I would say after the third NDE, it was more a reminder of all those gifts that I'd kind of pushed aside and forgotten about as I was getting older. Because as a child, I kind of knew they were there, and in fact, I assumed everybody did, that everybody had them. I didn't know. I thought it was an adult conspiracy that people just didn't talk about these things, kind of like sex. That, it was just one of those things that in polite company you don't talk about. And of course, because I'd had trouble in school because of it, I'd learned to keep it very, very quiet. And as I got older, I was probably in my late teens when I realized that other people didn't see colored lights around people. And I cried for everybody who couldn't. I really felt, very, very sad that other people don't see what I see. It took me a long time to get used to the fact that you don't see lights, you see flesh, And so for a long time I just kind of pushed it aside. And even though I had some, occasionally there'd be a bit of poltergeist activity, and I would just rationalize it away as, oh, those things happen, it's no big deal, and I'm just going to ignore it now and not ever talk about it. Or if I saw a ghost, I would just, again, well, everybody sees those, or I'm just not going to worry about it, and just kind of carry on. And I mean, in some ways, I think that was good, that I had, the years from my late teens and through my 20s where I really connected with this place and this life, and got married and did all those things that I said I wasn't going to do when I was 10, because maybe they wouldn't work out. Maybe I'd be better off with my ghosts and my pretty lights.
And moving things, did that happen occasionally?
Oh, yeah.
Or more than occasionally?
Occasionally enough.
And how did you explain that to people when it happened?
I just didn't. I just played innocent for the most part. Wow, did you see that? And I didn't know it was me. I mean, I actually didn't know that it was me doing it until fairly recently. Actually, I just assumed it was something out there doing it that had nothing necessarily to do with me. And I think that's one way of rationalizing it, just to live with it.
Of course.
You know,
well, you mentioned vegetables flying at your husband.
Yeah, when he told a bad joke in the grocery store and some greenery flung itself at him.
That's a wonderful story. So how does he deal with this? Does he find it interesting or funny, or just more a part of you?
When we were first dating, I explained to him that I saw lights around things. And I figured that, to be fair to anyone I was dating, that I had to at least come clean a little bit. And so I remember explaining to him that, because it was really his lights that attracted me to him. Like, he was like the brightest light in the room. I mean, there was an attraction there, that it was like this beacon, a lighthouse, that attracted me to him. And so, of course, when you put it that way, it sounds very cute.
Well, romantic.
Yeah.
It sounds very romantic.
It sounds harmless and romantic.
Mystically romantic. Yeah.
But it's harmless and new agey and cute. And he was fine with that. But certainly it's been a challenge for him that when things move, because he comes from a hard science background and he wasn't raised to believe in things like that. Awesome. But, even now, I mean, he's more open to the science of it, that there are researchers looking into these things, that it's not just me making it up. And I mean, he's seen it enough times, when I've done experiments, so the fact that I've gone to laboratories and participated in experiments, that's given it a certain validity to him that it wouldn't have otherwise. If it was just me having these weird things happening at home, he would tend to think we were both going nuts, I'm sure.
Right. Oh, tell us a little about the difficulty you've had trying to get scientists to verify these abilities.
There just isn't a lot of research into it. And I think that there's a reluctance, even among parapsychologists, to deal with what's essentially macro PK. And I mean, this is something that's actually been documented and written about. Charles Tart wrote a paper back in the 70s about the fear of psi, and how even parapsychologists are paralyzed in some ways by a fear of what they even want to study. And and he says one of the ways it shows up is in these parapsychological research projects that produce just barely significant levels of very, very small effects. So that, you'll get micro PK that's statistically valid and publishable, but it's got a p-value of just hovering slightly above 0.5, which, just
Right. Whereas if vegetables or a book fly across the room, they can't deal with that.
No. And they're happy to publish things as long as it's just barely significant. If it's extremely significant, then they think that there must be fraud or cheating or something going on, or they just don't want to look at it. And so when I've actually, hoped to become involved with researchers, a lot of them have just backed away from it. Yeah. There's been a few exceptions. I did some work with Bill Roll when he was still alive, and he had me at Michael Persinger's lab at Laurentian University, and we did some work there, and I've been to the Rhine Research Center and done some very preliminary work there. But, and I understand that part of the issue is funding and a lack of people doing research, but there's also
a lack of courage, perhaps, as well.
There's also a lack of courage that, people kind of push it to the side and go, yeah, that might be a really interesting area, but we're just not going to go there right now. And that's kind of where it stays. And I might not be, 5 years from now interested in doing a research project,
Well, perhaps this interview will stimulate some people to give you a call and actually do some research, which clearly should be done. I think it's fascinating.
Well, and as far as NDEers go, I was really shocked to meet other NDEers who've had poltergeist, occurrences in their own lives after their NDEs, and they didn't realize that it was something that's actually not uncommon with us.
Thank you so much for sitting down, being willing to talk to us about this. I think this is going to be fascinating to all the people that are connected with ions, and also with the people in general who are beginning to wonder, about the greater reality of this world. So, thanks again.
I want to thank Cheryl Lee for the degree to which she shared her experiences with us over the last two programs. She is a remarkable and brilliant woman, and I hope she will join us on NDE Radio again as her research progresses. I also want to thank my good friend Mauro Jones for the help he provided in recording this interview, and thanks to Dave Olson at Talk Zone Radio for putting the show together. For those who would like to learn more about NDEs, please check out our website at iands.org. And join us again next Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern for more NDE Radio. This is Lee Whitting saying, thanks for listening.